will not give up. Now, last year's marriage equality survey put freedom of religious expression on the national agenda. This week, inflammatory comments by one of our biggest sports stars have reignited the debate.
Israel Folau is one of our country's most spectacular athletes, a superstar in two codes. Let's just forget about the whole AFL experiment. But last week he said that gay people will go to hell unless they repent their sins and turn to God. Folau deleted his comment, but not before igniting a firestorm of controversy.
Absolutely disgusting. How anybody could possibly imagine that it's okay to think that.
Pretty sure the Bible does say that, but I don't think that's an inappropriate comment to have.
Horrible. Did he actually say that?
But the star fullbacks doubled down, tweeting a Bible verse suggesting he's being persecuted.
Israel is entitled to his views. I disagree with them. But he's shown courage in articulating them, and he hasn't backed down. And if he's not entitled to those views, can someone in rugby tell me what views he is entitled to?
Folau's devout Christian faith is well known, and while he's free to express his beliefs, sponsors are also free to take their money elsewhere. And it's safe to say major sponsor Qantas isn't impressed, which puts cash-strapped Rugby Australia in a tight spot when it comes to actually punishing one of its most valuable players.
Israel acknowledged that maybe he could have put the positive spin on that same message and done it in a less disrespectful way. He certainly understands that he has caused some people some grief over this.
When Israel Folau pulls on a Wallabies jersey, he represents all of us. So should he be expected to represent the values of a majority of Australians ahead of his own?
We put him in a football code because he's good at football. His personal views on religion are his own views.
Once he puts on that Australian Guernsey, he becomes an icon, and a lot of people look up to that.
He's a sportsman. He kicks a ball, for God's sake. I'm not asking him to give me an opinion. I'm asking him to play sport.
Liberal MP Tim Wilson joins us now. Tim, good to have you on the show for this because, of course, you are strident free speech advocate. You're also a recently married gay man, and congratulations on the wedding, by the way. So you have an interesting perspective on this. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's frankly ridiculous. I mean, somebody's expressed their view from a faith-based position, a position that's been held in society for many people for thousands of years, and they have every right to express it. Of course, people have a right to argue against it or condemn it, but the idea that people wouldn't be able to express those views without bringing in the question of sponsorship arrangements, to me, seems pretty ridiculous.
The free speech, of course, doesn't mean free from consequences, and sponsors can do whatever they like if they see their bottom dollar being affected. What would you say to any sponsors that are considering walking away?
Well, I think, frankly, sponsors should be very careful because, firstly, the people are sponsoring the team. They're not sponsoring an individual. The people who are in the team are not hired because of their opinions or their brains. They're hired because of their brawn. And, frankly, I don't know why people are taking Folau's opinions overly seriously. But if you react so strongly against one opinion, it then, as a sponsor, suggests that you're endorsing everything else that every other team player is saying as well.
Tim, Rugby Australia seemed to have let Folau off with a light scolding, and of course he didn't make a pledge that he won't tweet like that again in future. How do you think they've handled this?
I think they're learning as they're going along. There's lots of examples where football codes, for instance, have had to deal with issues around racism or sexism in the past, and rugby as well. Whereas this goes really to an issue around personal morality and faith. And it isn't just about homosexuality. It's also about what happens if he put out that everybody who isn't part of his particular faith is also going to an eternally unfavourable place like hell.
I've never heard hell described as eternally unfavourable. That's quite a quaint way of describing it, Tim. But from the rugby union's perspective, they would say this contradicts their values. So they have a brand that they are trying to protect. They came out in support of same-sex marriage, for example, last year. So they want to stand for something. And if this doesn't align with that, you would expect them to take some kind of action, and the sponsors, I suppose, the same thing.
Well, ultimately, rugby's got a choice about whether it wants to marginalise people who have these types of views. The reality is Folau has not talked about what's happening so much on Earth. He's talking about what he thinks is going to happen in the afterlife, and there are lots of people that don't even believe in that. So why people get upset about the actions of a God they don't even believe in and where they might send somebody afterwards, to me, is kind of bizarre.
Tim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Up until now, the world